For the second straight game, the Winnipeg Jets have dominated at even strength and massively outscored their opponents. Very close to a shutout, barring one minor blemish. Let's chat about that on tonight's episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets.
You're Locked On the Hockey Jets, your daily podcast on the Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Evening, friends, and welcome to tonight's episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Harrison Lee, an avid Winnipeg Jets fan and an online blogger. You can follow me on Twitter at HLivingLoco and at LO_Winnipeg Jets. Thanks for making Locked On Jets your first listen of the day, every day. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe on all of your favorite podcasting platforms and YouTube. Doing so, of course, is always free of charge, and ensures you never miss another episode. Most of all, though, we just love and appreciate your support. Tonight's episode, we are starting off with a big Winnipeg Jets victory. The Jets just slapped the Vancouver Canucks 6-1. Great game, only one minor blemish. You already know who was probably involved in that one. I am going to laugh because it was a little funny. But all that said, the Jets played a second straight game of dominant 5v5 play. They've shut down Colorado. They just shut down Vancouver, and it comes from a couple of big lineup changes, which, considering how it was in the last game, I was hoping the Jets would continue it in this one. They did, and look what happened. They got rewarded. We'll talk about all of that in just a brief moment, but before we go any further, want to let you know that tonight's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Now, like I said, the Jets came into this game with a revised lineup that they began with in the last game. And as it turns out, the new middle six, so to speak, has paid a real dividend for this team, right? Big performances all across the lineup. All four lines, for the most part, rolling and winning their matchups. It happened against Colorado. It's happened again against Vancouver. And based on how the Jets have been controlling play, you'd almost be inclined to believe it's going to happen against most teams in the league. If you can do this against the Avs and teams like Vegas, which we'll be seeing here pretty soon as well, it's a pretty good feeling. It makes you have a lot more confidence for what a potential postseason picture might look like, especially if the Jets are active at the trade deadline. And I do believe that they will be. It's been in their pattern recently. You've got Hellebuyck playing out of his mind. It just makes a lot of sense that the Jets will probably look to increase the quality of this team. And so in this game, what really stood out? Well, the Jets pretty much came out flying immediately. This top line got to work. And I think a lot of why the top line has been able to do even more recently is with the middle six now finally fixed. It takes less of the pressure and focus off that first unit. The top line is still kind of like a 50-50 line, probably against top-end matchups. But so long as they are able to essentially do this thing where they can almost back cleanup after the middle six sort of bulldozes their matchups, I think that could actually work, right? It's not going to be the most ideal if you're doing a best on best, but so far, because Kyle Connor has been Kyle Connor at a new level this year, I think it's been less noticeable. So I'm hoping that continues. I think that's good, It's maybe not how other teams would probably do it, but perhaps the Jets can get away with it. So far, in the regular season at least, it's been working more than it did last year. So crossing fingers that continues, but the top line tonight had some very, very pretty plays, some great stretch passes through the neutral zone, some jailbreak options, and they were just an absolute menace down low, and it led to Kyle Connor getting one of the fastest hat tricks in Winnipeg Jets history. Just took him 14 minutes to come away with 3 goals. And, for a guy who I think this year has significantly improved his defensive commitment and awareness, that felt like a really cool reward. He's really upped his game to a level that I wasn't sure he'd ever be able to reach with this team, but he has absolutely hit it out of the park. He is playing and, supplementing his top line scoring with actual top line play on the ice, on and off the puck. And so fantastic to see him do that. The combinations with Scheifele and Velarde did really well. Pionk got in on the action as well. Neal had a blister of a slapper at the beginning of the second period, and Winnipeg really just kind of ran away with this game. The only things that you could really be concerned about, if at all, were just this thing that the Jets tend to do where they try to clear the puck along the walls in the defensive zone. Their blue liners do this a lot, and it does get picked off fairly frequently. That was where I would say a lot of Vancouver's best offensive chances came from. Otherwise, not really much to be concerned about. I did say that there was one other blemish. Stanley kind of misplayed the puck in the neutral zone. Niels Höglander dispossessed him, created an immediate 2-on-1, and right off of that, that was the only goal of the night. It happened late in the third period, and it was really annoying because it ruined, again, Connor Hellebuck's shutout. And I don't want to blame one player for this happening, but this is like the second time that Stanley has been on the ice when a shutout was in play, and it was the only goal that was conceded, and it took away the shutout. So not really happy about that, but it is what it is. I will say, in terms of other really positive performances, Perfetti finally recording a multi-point game, and he was just, again, really good tonight. And I think it really speaks to what I've mentioned before about him, is that he was making a lot of the detail plays and stuff on the forecheck when he was playing with Nemesnikov and Ehlers. It's just that his line mates really weren't taking advantage of it. Now, finally, he's with players who, actually work with his skill set and that can kind of get to the net and that can sort of do the, quick one-touch sort of passes and quick interchanges between spaces, where Perfetti is more likely to make a ton of chaos. And in this one, it really paid off. He almost scored himself. He is actually overdue for a goal or two. He had two really good opportunities that were either blocked by somebody on the goal line, or he just had a big save from Lankinen. So, unfortunate for him, but, a multi-point performance. Even Kupari got an assist in this one. Niederreiter recording a goal. Everyone just had a lot of fun, and we even had one super sick power play goal that took just a few seconds to score. So Winnipeg, again, really running away with this one. A second straight game where the 5v5 play is, fantastic. And what I will say is this. I don't want to overstate this being, a small sample size, right? But in 2017, 2018, it has been a while. But if you recall, the Jets started that year not that great at first for the first couple of games, and then they started to ramp up after, some early injuries and stuff forced the Jets to make some big lineup changes, especially as they got, into the season and towards the midway point. And after that, Winnipeg found some new line combinations, and they just took flight from there. I don't want to say that that's what's happening now, because it would require us to know the future of what happens with the line combinations once everyone's back, but I'm starting to wonder if this is maybe that turning point in the season. It is, hard to say for sure. Arniel hasn't exactly given the clearest indication of how, firm he is with this. But if I'm the coaching staff and I see the Jets kicking absolute butt for two straight games with a new lineup that finally gets pretty much everyone going, why would you want to go back? I do want to chat about what I think is really working with this middle six and why I think this change is something we've been asking for, why it's immediately paying off, and what I hope the Jets do once everyone is back fully healthy in just a brief moment. But before we go too much further, did want to let you know about our friends and partners at FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win that first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. Obviously, for me, this upcoming weekend is probably one of the biggest I've ever had as a Ravens fan. I think this is actually going to be on the level of excitement of the Kansas City game last year. Obviously, that ended in disappointment for me, but I am very hyped to see the two MVP favorites go head-to-head. Obviously, I think Jackson probably deserves it, but this is a game where if you're thinking about, the amount of combined touchdowns between both teams, I'd say the over on 5 or 5.5 touchdowns is probably a fair bet. This is going to be a high-scoring game is my guess, and I'm hoping for a lot of fun. But the only way that you can profit off of this and have some fun is to go to FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $300 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's only at FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Hey, friends, and welcome back to this episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Every day, thank you so much for rejoining us on tonight's episode as we're just following up on a big Jets win. Winnipeg smacking Vancouver 6-1. Great performance. Second straight game for a new look middle six. And I want to chat about this middle six because I think there's a lot to unpack here. This, is another game where Winnipeg, quite frankly, just sort of ran away with the overall play, and I came away really impressed with how each line was able to pretty consistently roll. The Jets really didn't have to worry too much about sheltering anyone. I would say Winnipeg was just front to back pretty darn good. And again, only a couple of real blemishes. If I'm really being nitpicky, ignoring the Stanley goal, that one was not great. The Höglander situation, you probably were a little bit frustrated. I even heard some people booing, which I will say I won't personally boo a Jets player. I would actually, I would look more towards the coaching staff not recognizing that somebody is struggling, but, that's a conversation for a separate time. But, other than that, I mean, this was a fantastic game. And the middle six plays such a critical role because they eat a lot of the harder matchup minutes at times and really prey on opposing teams' depth units. And that's where I think it's made such a world of difference against a team like, first Colorado, right? The Avs have a very top-heavy offense right now. So if you can find a way to slow them down a bit, the Jets have the better matchups when you start going through their other lines. But it doesn't happen if you can't get Makar and McKinnon off the ice without them scoring 30 goals. Thankfully, in that game, it absolutely was the case. The Jets really frustrated those guys. They kept them, out of the most dangerous scoring areas. Generally speaking, they still got a few good looks, but Hellebuyck, I think, answered, most of the tests, and you're just not going to shut them down completely. But if you can limit them, you give everyone else a much better chance. And that's where having this revised middle six really pays dividends, right? You've got Ehlers, Lowry, and Iafallo, who look really good together. I know that Ehlers hasn't necessarily recorded a goal at 5v5 yet with them, but the first couple of games, he's getting much more involved in the offense. He's got an extra spring in his step, and it seems like, there's actual chemistry there. Lowry is great along the walls and in the corners. He'll look for Nick in other dangerous areas. Ehlers himself has come close to scoring once or twice already. Iafallo is great on the forecheck and has enough offensive ability to keep up. And then you go to the third line, and I actually think the third line might be the more interesting of the two. Niederreiter, Kupari, and Perfetti have looked really good together. Perfetti, obviously, I'm always a big fan of him, and I was kind of one of the people who probably defended him more than I think a lot of other folks did. When it comes to players that I will have more patience with, a young talent like Perfetti, who I can see doing a lot of the detail stuff right, I tend to give more time and space to, just because I can see stuff that they're doing that I think is working really well. It's just that there may be other circumstances around that, are holding this player back from doing really well. That's a difference where with Logan, I see him trying to make the same plays, and I get the sense that, his progression and stuff has basically plateaued, and he is what he is, right? But I think when you've got a Cole level talent who can really be a great middle to top six winger, a guy who's going to be a really good complementary player with a lot of skill, I think it's a little premature to, bury him and think that the reason that he's not scoring is because it's his own individual issues and stuff. In a game like this, and in the previous game against Colorado where he looked a lot brighter, maybe it's because he was just on a bad line. The second line before the split up really wasn't working, and I think you could very clearly see that. Vlad was a step behind. Ehlers was not on the same page. And now that you've got them apart and Vlad has been, replaced with Lowry on that second line, it's just made a world of difference. And Kupari, I've really been interested that his speed and pace has really been a good fit alongside Niederreiter and Cole. And what's noticeable is because he just has a pretty consistent net drive and he'll usually go to the same spaces, I think Perfetti has an easier time predicting and figuring out how to reach him. That trio has been a lot more active around the net. They've created better chances between the face-off circles, and they got rewarded several times tonight. So, just exactly the kind of stuff that you really want to see with this team. I continue to think that, Winnipeg is starting to, at least on paper and hopefully in the minds of the coaching staffs, putting two and two together in the right ways. That for me is the most important thing. I want this team to win and lose in the right way. If they're taking away the right lessons and if they're playing the right way, I don't necessarily have to see them win every game. That's not really the focus for me. It's about how, the Jets are getting the process right. That's always been my thing. I don't know how y'all feel about it. Winning is always really great and it's important, but when it comes to it, how you get your results and stuff kind of predicts how you're going to do in the future, right? And I think for the Jets, it's really important that they're seeing good success from decisions like this and lineups like this because, you want them to continue to make those good decisions. And this middle six has taken, even more of the offensive burden off the top line, which they've been doing better recently. So, you're not too worried about that. But it's nice to see that Ehlers and Perfetti are finally getting their games going. But what I am interested in is what happens when Appleton and Nemesnikov are back. I worry that they're going to go back to some of the old line combinations because that's what's familiar. Niederreiter, Lowry, and Appleton had good underlying results, but we all kind of saw that offensively they didn't have the same level of jump. And I think with Lowry now playing with Ehlers, there's a lot more upside there. You've got the big bulking frame of Lowry, who's great at creating chaos down low, and you've got the speedy perimeter play of Ehlers, who Lowry can find, and vice versa. Iafallo, whether you keep him up there or have somebody like Shibrakov maybe playing with them, I just think that there's any number of ways that you can assemble that trio that makes them a really good scoring and forechecking threat that'll take advantage of a lot of unique skill sets that play nicely together. Same thing for the third line. I really don't think you want to put Appleton back out there on that unit, whether it's, Kupari or somebody else at center. I think you've got options there. Maybe Gustafsson would be an interesting choice. Gus may not be as fast as Kupari, but he's a very smart player, and maybe he'll get on with a guy like Perfetti, right? That net drive, but the spacing and sort of the gap awareness to get into those tighter areas. Maybe Gus would be a great fit. I just think that, with the Jets being the way that they are, they often will go back to things that they think have worked in the past. And for me, if they do end up with Ehlers, Nemesnikov, and Perfetti again, that's a mission failure. You've taken away the wrong lessons. I don't know that they're going to do that. The fact that Arneal has now done this for a second straight game and kept it together, and the fact that they've, again, dominated play at 5v5 makes me a little bit skeptical that they're going to just hit the reset button and go back to the way things were. But the other part of me has seen the Jets do this a lot. It's a lesson that sometimes they don't always take the right pointers from. But hopefully this time is different. We've seen it happen before, and when the Jets, looked at the 17-18 team and took away the right lessons, look what happened. We had an amazing cup run that really only ran up against a hot goalie in Vegas with Fleury. So for me, I'm more optimistic about this lineup than I was maybe even about some of the first half team. I know that the first half of the season had some amazing win streaks and stuff, but I think a part of me always wondered how sustainable it would be over the long run. Your 5v5 play is really one of the most important predictors of your future success. And sure, you can get away with bad 5v5 for, a good portion of the season, maybe even a whole regular season. But once you get to the playoffs and the quality of your competition is consistently above a 500 record, that stuff doesn't fly as much. You can, again, get away with some stuff if your goalie stands on his head and if you somehow just have, the puck luck of the gods, but it's not something that you want to lean on, especially if you think you've got a real shot at going deep in the postseason. And now that the Jets have found some really good balances to this top nine, suddenly, if you make an addition, you could really put this team over the top. A Brock Nelson, a Matt Barzal, whatever it is that you're bringing in here, Elias Pettersson in, even more fantasy land, you could make this team a juggernaut. And it's what I've said before is that I think this team has always had a great foundation to build on. It's just that the Jets have struggled to see how to make it click and bring it all together. But I'm starting to think the Jets, at least on paper, are figuring it out. And I really hope that the recent run of success here, albeit just a couple of games, but a couple of really good games, is putting some ideas in Winnipeg's head that this is the way that they should go going forward. Will be kind of interesting to see what happens with guys like Lambert, Shibrakov, and Lucius. Lucius has started to really find his groove at the AHL level, which, at his age, you probably want to see. The injury stuff has really held him back, but he is, in my mind, one of Winnipeg's unheralded secret weapons in the prospect pool, and he's also a little more physically mature and robust than maybe either of Lambert and Shibrakov could be. When I say robust, I mean like in terms of his physical maturity and development. Obviously, he's had a bit of an injury history, a rather lengthy one, and that's why he's not playing with the Jets right now. I think if he'd been able to stay healthy with the Moose and stuff and junior, he'd already be with Winnipeg. But providing that he has a long season and continues to stay healthy, I wonder what he might look like for the Jets in their middle and bottom six. Winnipeg, has been searching for centers and for higher-end finishers and creative types. They might have some that can help boost this team in the back half of the season into the playoffs. So a lot of different things to consider, but, adding some really good veteran talent like a big 70 to 80-point player, I think might be one way that you can really swing for the fences and just go all in. This is a season where I really feel like the Jets have, the world being their oyster. And if they can take advantage, I'm feeling pretty good about their postseason hopes and dreams. But I just want to really see them go with this lineup, keep playing the right way, keep controlling play at 5v5, continue to earn these victories rather than just leaning on your power play and Hellebuck. And I think the rest will start to come naturally. That's how the 17-18 team did it. They could roll four lines effectively, and I'm really hoping that that is what the Jets are seeing here. But curious to know your thoughts on this. Are you impressed with how Winnipeg has played recently? Drop your thoughts and feelings in the comments below or at my social medias at HLivingLoco and at LO_Winnipeg Jets. In a little bit, though, there is one last little bit of fun topic stuff. It is about Dylan Samberg, who's obviously in his final year of his short bridge deal. I think he's going to be very expensive, and I know at the start of the season, somebody called me crazy for saying, he might be in the $5 to $6 million range. I'm not so sure that I'm wrong about that if you're looking at the way that Samberg is playing. Let's chat about what his value is to this team in just a brief moment. But before we dive into Dylan Samberg, did want to let you know about our friends and partners at Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you save any cash on subscriptions that you forgot you were even subscribed to and maybe don't need anymore? That's happened to me. I've even had situations where I've been paying for the same subscription twice over just because I did bundle one time, maybe in standalone at a separate time, and didn't realize I even had it, at the same moment in time, which is crazy. That's why Rocket Money is great. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. It can help you track all these subscriptions down. It can help you cancel them, and it helps monitor your spending and lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings together everything in one place, whether it's subs, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. They have over 5 million users and have saved a total of $500 million in canceled subs, saving the average member up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Again, like I said, I've got tons of sports and pop media subscriptions, whether it's music or TV or, hockey or something. And it's hard to keep it all tracked. And, Rocket Money is here to make it easier. And it's even helped me find some stuff that I didn't realize I had 2 accounts of. And if you're like me and you want to cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals, you can do it faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Hey friends, and welcome back to this episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Every day, thank you so much for rejoining us on this episode as we're chatting about some fun little things, some interesting things. And, after a big win against Vancouver, there's a player that I think in the past, this game and the Colorado game, that's really stood out in his return to the lineup. It's Dylan Samberg. Samberg, for me, is one of this season's most important and most valuable skaters for the Jets. I know that Morrissey may be the Norris caliber defender just because, not only is he good defensively, but he's also a monster offensively. Samberg, though, in terms of pure shutdown ability and defensive stability, he is our number one defensively oriented guy. He is an absolute beast, whether it's his D zone gapping, his transitions and breakouts, and the sort of security that he offers Neil Pionk. You notice that when Samberg and Pionk are out there together, they have become one of Winnipeg's best duos on the back end. It's probably why Pionk is looking at like a $6 million extension on his next deal. Samberg has been really the stabilizing anchor to allow him to offensively activate, to drop deep, and to essentially be a roaming fourth forward. Without Samberg, this team just was not the same. At 5v5, Winnipeg's play stagnated. Pionk's aggression actually got him into trouble more often. He was struggling to make defensive reads, and a lot of the issues that we've seen with Pionk, apart from Samberg, really became apparent, especially when he was playing with guys like Fleury and Stanley and a few other rotating cast members. When you've got Samberg, though, this guy has been really the rock on this back end. He, Morrissey, and Hellebuck are like the three-headed blue line monster. I know Hellebuck technically isn't a defender, but let's kind of put him in the category, right? He is your last line of defense, if you want to think of it that way. But these three together have been, such a core piece of this team's backbone and really the spine of their defense that it's almost hard to imagine life without Samberg now. I didn't, think that Samberg was ever going to become, maybe a fringe first pairing guy. I thought that he'd be a pretty good two-way second pairing defender, but I would actually say that Samberg is good enough to be considered, frankly, a fringe elite defender. He is one of the biggest and best performers on the season in terms of goals above replacement this season for Blue Liners. He's ranked in the top 20 in the league, if I recall correctly, or like top 30. So, both Morrissey and here up there with the likes of McCarr, Hughes, Fox, guys like that. And that's how good Samberg has been. And I know that at the start of the season, I said I was thinking, I'd love a 5-year deal in the $5 to $6 million range. I thought that he was going to come good, after seeing what he did last year, and he's actually surpassed my expectations. He's become such a pivotal part of this team, and I'm very curious to know what his next contract looks like. But, with him, pretty much I just can't imagine that this defense is, survivable if he's out. He has become, an absolutely rock solid, reliable defender, every down sort of player. He's on the PK, and because he can actually skate with the puck pretty well, it's allowed him to offensively support as well. Maybe not as much as a Morrissey or something of that nature, but he has had like 7 points this season already in 23 games, which is, considering his usual offensive output, pretty darn good. Last year he had 18 points in 78 games. This year he's definitely on pace to break that. So for a guy who's averaging, 20 minutes now a season, it's clear that he has become one of the two most important defenders on this team. I know that DeMello and Pionk may get some of the more flashy, descriptions because DeMello's on the first pair and Pionk is, the big point getter. But if I'm looking at the two most important blue line skaters, it's Morrissey and Samberg. Those are your two foundational core players. And I really hope that, either before the end of the season or, once we start hitting summer, the Jets get Samberg locked up. Let me know your prediction on his next contract. I'm thinking probably in the $5.5 to $6 million range, probably in the 5 to 6 year range. I think that would work, perfectly for both parties. With the cap going up, proportionally speaking, it's not going to be that much. And I think for the value that he brings to this team, it really is, no question. Lock him up, make him a Jet for the duration of his prime, and I think everyone will come away happy. But let me know what you're thinking about that in the comments below or at my social medias. Again, at HLivingLoco and at LO_Winnipeg Jets on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, and Blue Sky. But for tonight's episode, that is going to be all the time that we have. Tomorrow, we will preview Winnipeg's next game. Should be a fun one, I think, with the current, pace of this offense under, the new lineups and stuff, and the Kraken just coming off of a very gutsy win. I think this is a great chance for the Jets to add their 31st win of the season already. Tonight was win 30. 31 should be coming up on Thursday, but we will talk about that later. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great night. Enjoy it. And as always, go Jets, go.